Hello, welcome back. This is already part 4 of the 5 strategies I wish I had before I became a working mom and without which I was stuck and overwhelmed for way too long. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm sorry my nose is a little bit congested. I was battling quite the bug in the last few days and my nose is still a bit stuffy. But for those of you who are listening for the first time, my name is Kenya Romanovska. I'm the CEO and founder of Pros and Babes, which I've been running since 2017, and where we help STEM and STEAM moms turn the motherhood penalty into their greatest advantage, from pregnancy to maternity leave and beyond, even into the teen years. Today is a very important topic, the career and financial mistakes to avoid when you are a working mom. And it is a very broad topic. I will touch upon some of the key pieces. Again, I do have a worksheet that I encourage you to request or draw from the portal. If you are watching this on the portal, I will show my worksheet. There you go. So there are some fill in the blanks as usually. And today, what we're talking about is recognizing the challenges ambitious mothers face when returning to work post-baby, making diversity and inclusion a part of your everyday, realizing how important it is to speak up, understanding the motherhood penalty and why we can't afford not to invest in ourselves, and tips on how to become better at negotiation to benefit yourself and your family, and then personal branding and how to get it right. So when it comes to yes, the motherhood penalty is so important. So let's talk about the return to work and how it can be very stressful, adjusting to a new routine and drop-offs at daycare, commuting, settling back into a work environment, and the emotional strain of spending time away from their children are all challenges parents may face. The stress around returning to work for mothers had been well documented. A recent survey of over 1,000 women found that less than 1/5 of respondents felt confident returning to work after having a baby. The same survey found that 60% were worried about the request for flexible work being rejected, and 37% felt so unsupported and isolated upon the return they considered quitting, according to Sarek. When I started doing the work I do, I was surprised that mothers weren't really seen as part of the diversity and inclusion policies. It was a very interesting discovery. I think it's starting to have more space now, but when I started it a few years ago, definitely it didn't. And diversity and inclusion, according to HBR, is everyone's problem because it erodes the fabric of society to face sexism and racism and exclusion. Leaders at every level must use their power, platforms, and resources to help employees and communities overcome these challenges and build a better world for all of us. When we read articles like that from Harvard Business Review, it can be a little bit misleading because it can give us the impression that there are universal efforts that are happening. At least when I was reading these articles, I came into my work with the mindset that yes, leaders are responsible to take care of all of this. And often leaders themselves aren't supported to support us. So I had some periods of significant disillusionment, and this is why in my work I focus on individual mindsets, because individuals drive change, and I hope that the next generation of leaders will be empowered and equipped to help mothers navigate these transitions, whereas many times women are sorely disappointed. They're hoping they're going to get the right support and resources, and they don't. So I would just be wary when reading articles like this. I mean, they give context and they give opinions, but they're not necessarily reflective of reality. So when we're talking about wait, I'm having issues with my screen. All right. When to build on what I just said quickly, the only way to address the challenges associated with racism, sexism, and other forms of injustice in the workplace is to be open to experiencing this discomfort in an honest and forthright way. There are no shortcuts nor silver bullets for enabling inclusive workplaces, but you need to start somewhere. And Harvard Business Review recommends asking better questions, reading up, leaning into the uncomfortable, and just getting started somewhere. So that's right. It's very uncomfortable. If you find yourself wanting to speak up at work, you might be nervous, you might be afraid, you might not necessarily get the support, but if we don't start anywhere, we won't get anywhere, right? So let's talk about the motherhood penalty. What is the motherhood penalty? Mothers in the workforce experience additional disadvantages compared to women who are not mothers, including a per child's wage penalty. This often leads to a long-term financial and career implications. According to CBC, having children comes at a significant cost for a woman's career. Women are paid less than they would otherwise have been for up to 5 years after giving birth. And in the year following the birth of the first child, women aged 25 to 34 saw their earnings fall by almost half compared to women with no children, according to the 2016 census. However, this income drop lasts longer than 1 year. The most worrying statistic is that women experience a significant earning penalty spanning 5 years after the birth of a child. And that over time can amount to the $1 million wealth gap. Women can earn $1 million less than men by retirement age when combining the lifelong pay gap with common workforce interruptions, a Merrill Lynch executive stated. And it could be for different reasons, caring for her children, her parents, or sometimes even a spouse. And in that case, it is very possible for a woman to have earned over $1 million less than a man over the lifetime of a career versus a man who stayed continuously in the workforce during that time. Okay, so this is not, I've been talking about this for years, and this is complex. Obviously, during a 1 hour session or a half-hour session, I can't give you all of the tips that you would need to overcome the motherhood penalty, but that's why we've partnered up with an expert financial planner in our community who helps women design financial plans that allow them to make progress financially and not face the motherhood penalty. And one of the ways we do that is by talking about it at the right times. As mothers, we spend a lot of time talking about money. Number two, we look at creating additional streams of income that are not just salary-based, right? So where you're not trading your time for money. And I'll give you an example. One woman we work with, without making more money or saving more money, they restructured the wealth plan to build a $6 million wealth plan instead of a $1 million wealth plan. So the first piece is awareness. The second piece is taking the time to think about what you can do about it. And the third part is surrounding yourself with people who can help you, right? That's the big part. Is it does take strategy. It does take some expertise. Oh, sorry, there's some jackhammering and work gone outside of my office right now. So talk about it. Surround yourself with other women who do want to talk about money. Of course, the community, if you reach out to me, I'm connected with many women who like to talk about it. And that's the first step. Every year we spend 4 to 6 weeks in the Mumby program discussing how to structure our finances to overcome this pay gap, right? And the $1 million wealth gap. And I can confidently say that many people are on track to overcome it if they haven't overcome it already with the success of their investments, which is amazing. So the next step that I want to talk about is the negotiation. How often do you think you need to negotiate a raise? How often do you think you need to negotiate a raise? Well, the expert we brought in said at least once every 2 years. And the last time I did this workshop, I was glad to see that many women negotiate the raise more than twice, more than every 2 years. They do it more often. They do it strategically. They do it systematically. And we even had a mother and engineer come and talk about how she systematically negotiated a raise. Negotiation can be tricky, especially if you're not comfortable with the person you are negotiating with. So some key pieces of advice that I found in articles is know what you want. A lot of people don't get what they want because they don't know what they want. And so if you don't know what kind of working conditions you want to be in, what kind of people you want to work with, what kind of position you want to be in, where do you want to be geographically, how long you want to work, then you have nothing going into your negotiation. So first of all, you need to know what you want, right? And we spend a lot of time in the Pros and Bigs community discussing that. Number two, make the first offer. That's one article that says that women who ask for a raise are more likely to get one than those who don't. Number three, you have to be patient. So one woman who came to educate us on negotiating raises said that she didn't get a yes every time, but at least it gave her supervisor the knowledge that she was watching where her salary was going. And And that gave her an edge. Every time that they were talking about her and thinking about her compensation, she had talked about it, brought it up. And ultimately, sometimes she gets a yes, sometimes she doesn't get a yes. Another tip is pretend you're negotiating for someone else. This may help relieve the extra pressure. Too often, we see negotiation as a conflict. Instead, see it as the other party and you each wanting something. Negotiating is the best way to find a mutually beneficial solution. I got my favorite piece of advice from my lawyer. She said that negotiation is creative problem solving. And that really helped me shift my perspective on negotiation, because prior to doing some work with the Pros and Babes community and talking with her, I saw negotiation as something antagonistic, right? I'm going to the table to discuss my salary and I want more and my boss wants to pay me less, and we're at odds with each other. Whereas at the end of the day, the company wants a worker who is good at their job and satisfied, and you want to be paid appropriately. So my lawyer always talked about what is the scope of opportunities to discuss and to create solutions. And so that really changed my perspective on negotiation. When I was doing research for this topic for the community, I found such a wealth of information. The statistics were sometimes promising and sometimes not. Some articles said, great, more women are negotiating than ever. But there were other articles who were saying that women rate other women more harshly than men do. And so one of the bottom lines that I discovered when researching negotiation is you have to be strategic, like play the long game, read up about it, practice it, right? Hone your skills and do it. Negotiate at home, negotiate any purchases that you may do online when you can. That's something that we joked about with my husband. Is at some point I encouraged him to negotiate when he bought a guitar. And so if you don't do it, you won't get comfortable with it. You have to flex that negotiation muscle. So before I dig up some additional notes in your workbook, I have a couple of questions for you. I would like to ask you, how do you feel about working on your career skills, money, negotiation, and personal branding? Is it something that excites you today, or it doesn't? How do you feel about the motherhood penalty? And are you surprised or not surprised by it? Had you heard about it before? Does it bother you? I think it's important to have an opinion. I've become, it's interesting that I've gone through different stages, because growing up I was told I could do anything, and I still keep on seeing this data resurfacing that women are treated differently than men in the workforce, and I still haven't fully grieved the shock. But I guess I wish about this early. I guess I wish I knew about this earlier, and that I could have planned a little bit better instead of being the entrepreneur / journalist reporting about it and knowing that it's still reality today in the 21st century. If you're on maternity leave, I'd ask you to journal on how you feel about returning to work, how you're going to contribute to diversity and inclusion efforts, especially when it comes to fighting racism. And then in 1 year, how would you like to feel about your job, your role as a mother, and your role as a professional, and your role as a spouse? How much money you would like to make by the end of the year? And what are you going to do to achieve those things? Okay. So I'm going to grab a couple of extra notes because I see I didn't cover everything I said I would. Notably, I noticed that I didn't really talk about personal branding, and I didn't add it anywhere here in the workbook. So my apologies. Your personal brand is what people say about you behind closed doors when you're not there. So when we become a mom, many of us think that when we go back to work, we have the word mother branded on our forehead, and that we are maybe not treated as seriously, and we're not considered for promotions. I mean, I've heard stories of people who know they've been passed on for promotions when they became a mother, and it can be so discouraging. So that's why you have to be intentional about your personal brand. One question I like to ask is, how would you like your colleagues to speak about you? How do you want your boss to talk about you in a year, right? And are you somebody who is emotionally expensive? One of the tips I talk about is being led with a value of accountability. Just like so many people watching this video, when I went back to work after my first maternity leave, I felt like such a victim. I felt like, it was tough. It was much tougher than I had anticipated. My whole staff structure had changed. I I had a new boss, just things didn't go the way as planned. And from feeling completely empowered and prepared, and I had done a lot of the good things preparing for maternity leave, I just felt like such a victim. And over time, I realized that it was up to me to take some action and to decide how I wanted to feel and how I wanted to be perceived. And so accountability became one of my core values, and that's been game changing, right? So this is all part of your personal brand. So let me recap what I was talking about today in our workbook. Where did it disappear? There it is. I talked about a number of things. When we return to work after baby, there's something real called the motherhood penalty and maternal law bias in terms of how we are perceived and treated. I talked about the importance of speaking up. I talked about understanding the implications of the motherhood penalty and how important it is to invest in financial planning and actually building the resources around you to tackle it. I talked about the importance of negotiating and how to practice it. And then I briefly talked about personal branding, and your personal brand is typically anchored in your values and the vision you have for success and how people talk about you behind closed doors. And so you could really start off by saying, this is how I wish people would think about me when I'm away and how I'm going to be perceived by others as a working mother. So this is a broad overview. I mean, there's right now, as I'm recording this video in the Mom Geek program, we're covering career skills and leadership and career planning over the span of 2 months. We have numerous guest speakers. We have many planning templates to help you think about the type of leader you would want to be. And it is a big topic. But I hope that the few questions that I shared with you in today's workbook will help you at least get started on the topic. And regardless of when you're listening to this, whether it's on maternity leave, perhaps it's providing you with some intellectual stimulation. Perhaps as a working mother, you're wondering, what is your place at work and what's your next step, right? Or perhaps you're at a later stage in life. There's always challenges and there's always opportunities. And practicing negotiation, taking some time for your finances and surrounding yourself with people who like to talk about it, and working on your personal brand are always tools that will help you get ahead. So thank you so much for listening to today's workshop. The next one is going to be about tying it all together in a long-term vision. Feel free to request the workbook for any of the sessions or to grab it in the training portal. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.